Well, big banks forced to pay nearly $37 billion in fines for misleading investors in the 2008 financial crisis.
Now a hearing is scheduled to investigate allegations that the DOJ forced them to donate some of the money to left-wing groups. Here to explain the shocking accusations from our sister network, Fox Business, Stuart Varney. Stu, great to see you this morning.
Good morning.
What in the world is going on?
Bank of America, for example, has been forced to pay $17 billion for what it did during the crash. Some of that money will actually go to left-wing activist groups, Acorn-like groups.
What?
$100 million from Bank of America alone.
Stuart, Acorn-like groups were part of the problem back in the day.
Back up a second. You remember, let's say, 8, 9, 10 years ago, activist groups like Acorn would invade a bank manager's office, sit there and say, unless you give more money to us minority groups or to poor people, you're not serving the community. Unless you pay up and give us loans, we'll call you a racist.
Right.
They give them the loans. Loans were often defaulted on. That became the problem of the big crash. Now, the government is saying, you've got to give money to those activist groups. They're being turned into the victims.
Yeah.
The banks are the bad guys, the activist groups are the victims, and they'll get a lot of money.
Isn't this just incentive, then, for
It's
a group
outrageous.
like Acorn?
It is. Yes, it is an incentive. And there's even more of an incentive. For every $1 that these banks give to the activist groups, that counts as $2 in homeowner remuneration. So they've got an incentive to give money to Acorn-like groups.
So they say, wait a minute, we want you, Bank of America, we want you to lend these interest-only loans, no money down, 100% financing, and then a few years later, when the crash happens, people's houses are worth $150,000 less, and then they have to file foreclosure.
And that was all the bank's fault, not the fault of the activist groups. That's been completely reversed. It is the bank's fault, according to the Obama administration. Give them the money, because the activist groups are now the victims.